So the next thing we need to do is to import your media into Premiere. And let's go to the Preferences panel. And we'll go to the timeline. It defaults to stereo, but that's not what I want you to do. I'm going to import one of these files, and I'm going to show you what will happen when we bring it in as a stereo file. So we bring that into the timeline, and you'll see that this is a stereo track, so there's a left and a right. But we have two different microphones on each of these, and so they need to be split out. And so the easiest way to do that is just to have your import settings correct before you do that. And so by going back to our preferences and to the timeline, if we set this to mono, it's going to bring those into two separate tracks. So now I'm just going to double click, and I'm going to import the low res folder. I'm going to import the audio folder, and double click and import the high res folder. Okay, so we're not going to mess with the high res until we get done with our project. But if we bring in one of our files, we'll see that we have two different channels here. I like to drag in my first file because the sequence will match the settings of the video, and that's the quickest way to get things right. I'm going to drag our timeline out of our media though, and I'm going to hit return, and I'm going to call it Your Name Dailies. And so I'm going to hold down the shift button and collect all these bad boys and drop them into the sequence. Hit the backslash, and then I'm going to select them all and unlink them. We can tell the tracks by their labels. Right now we just see the video labels. We can go into the wrench, and we can show the audio names if we want to. Sometimes it gets in the way when we're syncing dailies, so I'm going to turn them off, but this is how you know what you can do. These are the FS5 files, and so they are automatically in sync, but we've got some Tascam media that we'll need to sync up for our other tracks. For this particular shoot, they didn't get all the audio on the Tascam, so let's go to 102, take one. So here's our slate here. And then we'll drag 102 right down here. That looks like the slate for 102. C for cut. Cut off the head of this. And match it up with our take. See if it's all in sync. Alright, it's just a little bit off, so it sounds like maybe 1 or 2 frames off, so let's get in here a little tighter, see what we got. Yep. 1 frame off. Alright, so basically take all of the audio that you have in your folder and sync it up to the dailies. And we want to be working with the low res for the video. And when your dailies are completed, I'm going to suggest that you could either do two things. You can either duplicate the sequence and start editing from that, or you'll create a brand new sequence and just cut and paste shots from your dailies, because we want to keep the dailies as pristine as possible so that if we have to go back and find alternative takes, it's really easy for us to do that. So even though I just went over this in class, I'm going to hit basics of continuity editing really quick again. With continuity editing, there are plenty of opportunities for a good cut. A lot of times it's when our subject is entering or exiting frame. Another good opportunity is to cut to them in mid-stride. So here's an example of that. Here I am entering the edge of frame, and right here is my cut, and it's in mid-stride. Right foot forward, and it becomes a seamless cut. It's not calling any attention to itself. I continue to be working left or right. The edge of frame is the cut point, and we always want to cut on action. So I'm dipping down. So I'm edge of the frame, it's my dipping down, that's the action. And so that's a good example of editing continuity. In this particular situation, we were just doing straight cuts. But when we get into doing dialogue, we want to think about in terms of L edits and J edits, where we either want to hear them before we see them, or we want to see them listening before we hear them. And it's okay to cut the dialogue with straight cuts to get the pace right, but then you'll want to drag those left or right in a way to make the edit disappear by creating L and J edits. So back in Premiere, I'm looking for opportunities like motion and entrances. So she's in the middle of leaning forward for this edit. We see her talk. We see him listening. We hear her. She says, "Come on." And unfortunately, you guys can't hear the system audio because I'm doing my tutorial. But the whole idea is to create those J and L edits. This is a nice little cut on motion because the laptop is still in motion over that cut.
Hey, do you want to see something gross?
No.
Come on, it's pretty gross.
No, thank you.
Don't be a pussy. I'll be your friend.
I don't even know you. Oh, God. I'm never going to be able to unsee that.
I know, right? It's so gross.
Yeah, I do now.
Hold it.
Now this edit's a little rough right here. This is a hinky edit. It kind of calls attention to itself. But this is why we needed to move the camera closer to the line to the left so that the background would change more and not call attention to itself. So once we get picture lock, then we can duplicate that file. I'm holding down Control and we'll call it picture lock CC. Open that up. And so now that we got picture lock, we want to replace our video with the high-res stuff. So I'm going to select all of the video, hold down Control, and we are going to make offline. But we want everything to remain on the disk. Now we're going to select it again. We're going to link media, hit locate, and we're going to go to our high-res folder. And so now everything's reconnected. Let's run through it to make sure it has worked the way we want it to. And so this last shot, for some reason, is not matching up. And so it's 105, take 5. So we'll try to relink just that one again. Take that shot offline. We want 101, take 5. There's 101, take 5. Drop it in. See if that fixes it. Gave it a chance to think. Okay, and it reconnected this time. So now we've got our high resolution video matched, and now we want to get into color correction. And it's always a good idea to start with a wide shot. we want to open the Lumetri color panel. And we want to open the Lumetri scopes and give it some room. So with this shot selected, we'll go into the basic correction and we'll start by white balancing. So I'm going to click on this and I'm going to make these lampshades white and see what happens. Everything gets a little bit blue, and so that's a little weird. So let's see if we can find a white reference, like right there maybe. Alright, so that gets us fairly close. So the first thing we want to do is we want to stretch our blacks so that they're touching 0 and our whites so that they're touching 100. So we'll make this scope a little bigger so we can see what we're doing. So I'm going to pull the blacks down and we're going to push the whites up. And we want these scopes to look the same, and so we see that the red is a little bit low. So let's mess around with the green magenta. And I'm not even looking at the picture, I'm just looking at the RGB scope. Let's mess around with the blue orange a little bit. We've got a balanced shot. Let's see what happens if we bring down the shadows a little bit. Push up the highlights. And then, now that we've got it balanced, I kind of want to give it sort of an interesting look. And so, I'm going to take a look at some of the film stocks, see if something looks interesting. I think I like this one the best, and we can tweak its intensity, make it stronger. I'm just going to pull it back a little bit, and then what we can do is hit Command C on the Lumetri, and then we can just paste it into each of our shots. So when you're done with the color correction, we can export this. We'll put it in a folder called Final, and it'll be Picture Lock Color Correction, and I want it to be H.265, high bit rate, use maximum render quality, and we will export that. When that's exported, we're going to want to export an OMF, which is all of the audio editing that we did, and we want to embed the audio, and we want to use the complete audio file so that if we need to grab alternate takes from the video, it'll be available to us in Audition, and we want to put that into the Audition folder to work with. So hit save and it will export. The next thing we want to do is take our color corrected high-res file, open it up in QuickTime, and we're going to make a low-res thumbnail to use in Audition. So we're going to export as 480p. We're going to put it in our Audition folder, and we're going to call it thumbnail. And when we take a look at that, we'll see that we've got a nice low-res small picture so that when we import this into Audition, it won't use up all of the system resources just to process the video, because we want that for sound. In the next step, we'll be going into sound design.